Okay, it's Tuesday. We're here to rock your event once again. I'm Sue.
I'm Ryan.
That's Ryan. That's Ryan.
That's right.
Right? Exactly. And we have another special guest, which is exciting. I'm loving having these guests on.
Yeah.
So we have Steve Napolitan. We're going to meet him in just a moment. We have a little intro we want to share with you first.
Let's go ahead and hit it.
Woo! All right.
Woo-hoo.
I'm liking the rockin'.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
we
like
have.
it.
I know, it's super fun.
Super fun. So tell me about Steve, would you, Sue?
I would love to tell you about Steve. Steve Napolitan is a #1 international best-selling author, award-winning marketer, and international speaker. He has made millions for his clients and has worked with companies such as Apple, Intel, Charles Schwab, and Nestle. Steve went from overwork, stressed out, beyond burnout, been there, worked 80 plus hour weeks to less than 40 hours now, and living the life he dreamed with his wife and children. With more business, more life, Steve typically works with entrepreneurs and C-level executives who have found success but are not living the life they desire. He's helped his clients reach millions in additional revenue while helping them design the life they want and live it right now. So we are happy to welcome Steve Napolitan. Yay!
Hey.
Thank you so much, Sue and Ryan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you on.
Yes. So as a speaker, we talk about events, we're talking about rocking your event. Last year, we had a whole situation that took place. So you were used to doing a lot of in-person live speaking engagements, and we flip-flopped a little bit to that virtual. How was that transition for you?
Well, it was drastic. It definitely was. I at the beginning of 2020, I was actually in Africa speaking in Namibia, and got back into the US the first week of March. And then within 2-week period, pretty much all of my calendar from 2020 went away except for two events that quickly transitioned. I also run my own events every year, and I chose very quickly, and one of them was in April of 2020. And my team and I, we rapidly decided not to cancel our events. We went back to our core purpose. Why do we run our events? What are we doing? And we said we absolutely do not want to stop due to what's going on. So we actually did everything we can to get caught up on the virtual space, and what can we do to create what we would do in the room. How do we create that experience virtually? So we adapted as quickly as we can, and I'm not saying it wasn't challenging. It was, but we had to change the way we do business, Sue.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you're really smart. One of the smart business people, as you already are. Not sitting around and waiting for what's going to happen next. You were just like, no, we are moving forward. So, what were kind of the little adjustments and things you had to learn? Those little learning curve going to that virtual space.
What I want to there's some technical things, but I also want to bring up the personal side of it. What I mean by the people side, I guess, is the word to use. We first got kickback. I mean, here's people that bought a ticket to come to a live event, and then we're like, oh, we're going to do it virtually. And they're like, what? No, I want to wait. And then I had to go in and say, well, why would we wait? Like, isn't it most important that we have this result? You signed up to come in April because you wanted this result. Is that correct? They're like, yes. Then why would we wait? And it took some convincing, but we got people there. And what I had to do was take away the risk. I said, hey, look, come in April. We want you to have this now, and we'll give you an extra ticket when we come in person. Nice. At that time, we thought that by fall, maybe we'd be able to do it. that didn't happen, so we just kept giving more. But we were able, but then right after that first event in April, we were able to get testimonials of our clients saying, oh, wow, they pulled it off. I got what I needed. I'm able to do what I need to do. And it was even more important that they, especially for what we do, they were getting this attention. They were getting this education during this challenging time. And then we even had some people that have been to our live events that also attended. They were coming for a second time. And we had some surprising, they said they even liked the virtual event more. So getting that, so that's one thing we did, capturing those testimonials right away so that we could get more engagement from the people that were afraid to come there in person. Because we did have some people that did not show, but then we were able to get them to the next event using that. And then the other thing that I would say technically was one, I know people, there's other friends of mine. One gentleman I know, he spent $100,000 on an event that he does every year. And then after he heard that I did my event in April, I think it was like May of last year, so about a year ago, he said, he was calling me. He's like, "Oh, I'm doing my event like you." And I'm like, "Oh, great. You have a crew at your office or what?" He's like, "No, it's just me. I'm just doing Zoom." I'm like, "What? No, like you don't go from $100,000 to zero." So the other thing that I think folks needed to know, and we spent more in some cases. We had more gear and more cameras, and brought to the experience the way that we could. And then even hiring a musician to play music. And the one that we chose was in Atlanta, but they like popped in and they were able to bring music to the event so we could get people up out of their chair. And a lot of folks said, "Oh, we have Zoom fatigue now, so we need to shorten the meetings." And we went the opposite. We lengthened the meetings and created more exercises, workshop, more breakout rooms, everything we could to boost the involvement of them and not make it just a meeting where you're sitting there looking at your webcam. And that those are just a few of the things that added to the production value by having more cameras and more gear and even having a small crew. So on my biggest events, I would have a 3 to 4 person crew, small, creating, and at one point we had up to 5 cameras, just so there's more to look at than just one camera staring at me.
All right.
You are such a smart guy.
I just didn't want it to be boring, and I do have the production background, Sue, so it helped to know filmmaking a little bit.
Yeah.
So.
And I'm curious because I think so many people went to Zoom, and even today I see so many events, and it's not just small mom pa type of organizations putting them on. They're large, even local media companies that have a relatively large presence here in Northern California are still doing Zoom, which just blows my mind simply because of the limitations that come with it. So how important, I mean, it sounds like it was pretty important for you to really put on a show for the event, because it's like, how do you transfer that energy to the crowd when you're not in front of them?
Yeah, it's well, one thing I always do, Ryan, is I engage the audience always. So I think even other speakers, sometimes even when they're in the room, they memorize their speech and they give the best performance they can. And I've seen speakers that can give a great performance, but they're not engaging the audience. So I think first and foremost, no matter what technology you're using, or if you're literally on stage, you have to actually engage the audience. So the simple answer is I ask. I like engage the Q&A. I typically rarely ever do an event without at least one staff member, someone with me to help manage the Q&A box. I'm constantly asking. I'll even do little things like, in the Q&A, say I got that, or right on, or sometimes it's just one word, just like you would tell people, "Hey, everyone raise your hand." And then we get all those things coming through. So so the simple answer is we have to engage the audience. If I don't get that feedback, then it's like talking to a wall, which is not fun for a speaker. We don't know, is this landing? Are you getting it? Because even I'll stop. Sometimes people don't go into the Q&A, Ryan, and I'll just be like, "Okay, I need to know if you're getting this. I actually don't want to go forward. Come on, don't be shy." Like I'll wait till I have compliance, just like I would in the audience. So I was taught when I started getting coaching around speaking, you want to get compliance early on as a speaker. And that, so that's why I'll make jokes like, "Hey, how many of you here need this?" And I'll ask them to raise their hand. And if no one raises their hand, I'll make jokes. I'll say, is no one's arms working? How many of your arms are working today? And just little silly things to get them to raise their hand. And it actually works. And then I even make commitments. I'm like, "Listen, I'm here to help you, but if you're not here with me, I can't help you." And so I'll stop my speech and I'll actually interject and say, I need you to comment in the chat box. I need to know if this is working, because if it's not, we need to stop. Then obviously I'm not doing a good job. You're wasting your time. So who gets this? What questions came up? And then another great one that I always like, Ryan, is what has been the greatest value thus far? What's the one thing that you got? Because then I'm actually getting feedback for my next speech, but also it helps everyone in the room because they're hearing, oh, that person had that takeaway. So it's actually reinforcing the whole engagement.
Okay, nice.
Well, you do a great job. I've seen you, live before, and you do such a great job of, like you said, engaging that live audience with, standing up, getting up, raising the hand. You can't just sit there and zone out in the room with you. So, I mean, I think it's pretty amazing that you were able to transfer that in a virtual way, which, like you said, your folks got value. They came for something, and they got what they came for. So I'm going to say big time kudos to you for doing that. There's a lot of people who can take a page out of that, your virtual playbook, as it were. I think you're on the right track, 100%. So now, as we move into our next phase of whatever the heck this is, some in person, we're talking about doing a lot of hybrid events where you've got the in-person element and then of course that virtual element as well. What are your thoughts on that, and maybe some challenges or techniques that maybe might be some good tips for folks moving forward?
Well, thanks for that, Sue. I think it's a big deal and it's a big conversation. And I just did my first one. I got to speak in Idaho. They've been a little bit ahead, as far as opening up, but they had some people in the room and they limited the number, and then they put the rest on virtual. And it was quite successful. The main thing was there was a higher level production value having more cameras, and I think we can even go with more cameras. So the challenge with hybrid is that you're really running two events, and everyone needs to think of it in that way, and that does increase the cost. So for everyone running events, just plan on spending more, but in the end, it goes back to what you were just saying, Sue, about what I previously said. We have to go back to what our core purpose is. Why am I running this event? What is the outcome that I'm looking for? And what do I want? And here's why I say we have to spend more. Right now, it's just the way it is. The production value has to be there. Otherwise, one of the audiences lose. So what I mean by that is if I'm in the room and I'm on the stage and I'm giving my attention to those in the room, and then the camera's not lining up, or I would even have a moving camera. Like if it's a big enough room, have a jib arm like you see when you see the Academy Awards and the camera comes down on you. I mean, again, production value. But if you can do that, then your production team, you got to have a live switcher, multiple cameras, because what we're used to now is this. Like, look, I'm looking at you. Anybody watching this, they're seeing me look at the camera, and there I am talking to you. And so you want that experience. So if there's not enough camera angles, or and you brought up, you've seen me, Sue. So if I'm walking around and then there's like no camera of me, now I've totally turned my back to a whole portion of my audience.
Right.
And so either the person in the room wins, or if I'm too much to the camera, then the person in the room is going to lose and the person on the camera is going to gain. So really, what my suggestions are, you've really got to think through the production, and you got to have enough cameras so that you can make the experience you want online. And then you've got to actually allow them to ask questions. And I would even suggest, if you're on stage and you have like a big screen on one side and a screen on the other, and you have PowerPoint, let's say, or you have slides, then one side is your slides and the other side is other camera feeds. If you can get some of the events I'm doing as we go hybrid, I want the audience that's on the virtual side to be on the screen so they can engage with the audience in the room. And then we can even take questions. And if I have a live video feed from those coming in, when they ask a question, we could bring them up on the screen, and now they're in the event. So everyone feels like they're part of this event. These are the things that we need to start thinking of that I think I'm not hearing enough discussion on. Some people are thinking this way, but that's how you need to feel that inclusion. And I guess I'll end this. One thing that I've really loved, I've been speaking and teaching all around the world. Like I was saying, I was in Africa right before we all shut down. And so I've had people fly from all over the world to California to come be with us. But what happened during this year is we literally had a global event. One of my events, the first one that we had, I had people from Australia and we had people from Puerto Rico. And as far as the time difference, I think that was the biggest gap on that event. But when I was having lunch in California, the Australians were having breakfast and the Puerto Ricans were having dinner. So I had to start saying meal break. And I think I don't want to go away from that. It actually increased our accessibility. People that would say, oh, I'll have to come to your event next year. I can't fly into California. Now they're able to just say yes. So I don't want to overlook the hybrid. I want to accept it so I can help more people faster, but I need to do it right. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That makes total sense.
And I want to kind of circle back to one of the earlier things that you talked about as far as having multiple cameras and then engaging with the camera, engaging with the audience. It almost seems like you have to choreograph or, think about that with your production crew. So, and it's that dance, right? Because when you're dancing with somebody leads and somebody follows. And that takes a little bit of time to actually work through that, where people kind of get a feel of, oh, okay, I have a feeling he's going to look here. That's camera 2. Let's go ahead, hit camera 2. So do you actually, as you're getting into these hybrid events, have you actually kind of considered that choreography, or do you have conversations with your crew, or what type of conversations do you have?
For me, Ryan, it's always been a thing. Like, I always talk to the camera crew and give them kudos because I know I'm the type of speaker. For those that have not seen me, I like run around the room and all that stuff. So it's even before all of this, I would definitely talk to the crew. My days in production, and I did sell a TV show to MTV. So I went from filmmaking to marketing and built an ad agency. And then as we won awards, started getting asked to speak and teach. So with that background, the thing that I think about is those camera operators that were more, when I looked for reality TV versus cinematic filmmaking, because I've made feature films, and then they're a total different type of camera operator. The reality TV camera operator has to be listening, and they need to be following the dialogue. And so sometimes even when we have multiple camera operators in a reality TV situation, we might have to separate them. And so I've worked with one camera, and they have to know, like, when to pan down to someone else talking, and it becomes instinctive. So I think this goes back to the production value, the caliber of camera operator or your switcher. Because in a live event, you'd be, you have like a live editor, and they're like, camera 1, get prepared. I think he's going to turn, like you said, he's going to turn left. Focus. Okay, we're going to camera 1. And if you have comms, I mean, we're talking full level production.
Sure.
You go as far as your budget will allow, but again, you have to go back to your end result. What are you trying to accomplish? And if you cut your budget by $2,000, $5,000 to have that other camera and that other camera operator, what is it going to cost you by losing those audience members? And so, yes, you do a hybrid event, and all the people that were virtual like hate it. And then what did you gain? You have to. Right. It's that pound. What does they call it? Penny wise, pound foolish. You got to look at the whole picture on what you're going to spend. Right. So hopefully that's helpful. It's not, this is the thing, Ryan, more people are having to get serious. I do think events cost more right now. And I think we're all going to be happier when we could go back to events, but I'm looking at how can I make my budget bigger because of what I just said. Right. What if I can increase my audience because not everyone's able to fly, but I could still open my doors to the people that want to be here live. So I'm looking at remember when we all went to events, and then there was VIP tickets. I kind of look at it as that, like the people that are going to come, that's like VIP. So how can I give them a VIP experience because they went the extra distance to show up, and then I can give the general audience, which is my on-camera audience, the best experience possible.
All right. They get the VIP gift basket, right? The bottle of wine, the chocolates, whatever it is.
Well, and even maybe on that, Ryan, just not those gift bags, but maybe I actually turn the camera off and they have some exclusive content that only the people that came live. Because then if I have too much camera in my face and they're feeling disconnected, like, oh, this guy's all about the production, then I can turn all those cameras off and say, hey, you're here, you showed up, you get this VIP session. Right. Maybe they get an extra day, maybe they get an extra hour in the morning or at the end of the day. Just different ways. So I guess I'm just bringing up all these ideas. I haven't decided all the ones I'm going to do, but these are the ways I'm thinking. How can I lift the level of what we're doing and be there and be accessible?
Yeah, love it.
I think, like you said, making sure that that virtual experience is positive, because, especially if you're doing programs, some of your programs, you have paid programs because this is great content and they are looking for an outcome and you're helping them get there. And if they're doing that paid content and they go, well, this was kind of just okay. Yeah, it was all right. And they're not going to come back and they're not going to refer their friends. If they have an incredible experience and they're like, wow, that virtual event was nothing like I have ever been to before. That was so cool. And it was way better than I thought it was going to be. Wow. Okay, that's a win for me. Like when you're impressing people and it's better than what they expect, then yeah, keep doing more of that.
Yeah. Right. And I think the breakout sessions can't be underestimated as well. And that was the cool thing. Like we had breakout sessions where you have somebody in New York and someone in Sydney and someone in Arizona all in one group. And I think that can still happen. So one other thing we're thinking about with the hybrid is having some tablets or other things so that when they go into groups, or maybe we even have like a kiosk. So depending on the amount of enrollment we have, maybe every group has a couple chairs or maybe one chair and two screens, so we can actually let the hybrid audience come in to the in the room experience. I mean, any way that I can blend those two is what I'm thinking, Sue.
I think that's a great idea. I was just like thinking of it myself as, sitting in a circle with, a couple of real people and a couple of TV screens all looking at each other, which I think is, that feels so Jetsons,
I think that's where we're going. And I remember years ago, I did some work with Cisco Systems in the Silicon Valley here in San Francisco Bay Area, and they had this thing called Telepresence. I mean, this is now probably almost 2 decades ago, definitely over 15 years. It was super expensive. Like I think Wells Fargo is one of their biggest accounts. But basically, they use surround sound and screens, and what they did is they were trying to reduce travel for executives and make them feel like they're in the boardroom. And it came with the table. The table was included in it, so they had the exact same table in New York as they had in San Francisco. So it literally felt like you were there. And this was 15 years ago. And now, look, we're able to do it with way lower cost. So anybody that's complaining about spending the money, this is a fraction of the cost, but yet we can still accomplish these things. And then, like to your point, Sue, you can feel like you're in the Jetsons, and then here you are. You have somebody in Sydney. You might have somebody elsewhere. The biggest thing is the time zone, but I found even that if your value is there, the Australians were getting up at 3, 4 in the morning to come to our events. And I just thank them profusely every day. And then the same thing, the East Coast folks, they were staying into the night, like 10 o'clock at night. And we tried to do it. So the other thing we're thinking is we might have to do 2 events maybe, so we can hit the European and African time zone with the East Coast. And then we can have the Pacific time with the Australians. But I did find more people showed up than I thought. And I've been to several other events that weren't even mine, and people were waking up in the wee hours to show up at an event. I was quite shocked, but people are willing to do it. If they earmarked the time, they looked at it as a retreat. But then instead of traveling, they were just going to bed early and waking up early, and they did it. Right. And I was pleasantly surprised how they showed up.
Well, you're providing an amazing experience and opportunity, so it makes total sense. It would be worth it for me too if somebody was doing something like that and I knew the value, and especially then you throw in that production value and you go, well, yeah, why would I miss that?
Well, and it was something that maybe you thought wasn't available. I could never go to the United States, or I could never go to Australia and see this person present who I would love to see. And now, because we've been because I would say it's fair to say that for a lot of keynote speakers, there was resistance to going online.
Yeah.
And everybody was kind of forced to, and now it's like, oh, okay, this wasn't as bad as I thought it would. It's still not great per se, but it's amazing what we can do. And you were talking about technology earlier, Steve, and through a simple green screen and a virtual background, you can put 3, 4 people in the same room, one's in Tokyo, one's in Australia, one's in the United States, and the other one's in Puerto Rico. you could do that now. And that's something you can do with consumer grade equipment. You don't have to have a multi-million-dollar budget like ABC or NBC does.
It's huge, and become when I started in film and production in the 1990s, I remember and I think all three of us can remember the vans showing up with the satellite link, and they're literally putting a tower out of the van. Remember when they had to crank that sucker up just so they could broadcast? And now here we are. I also remember my first time calling Canada with my business in the 90s, and I was like, should I make this call? Should I spend this money? And it was calling Canada. I'm like, now it's like you talk to anyone in the world, but I actually thought about it. I'm like, do I want to pay this? Is it worth it? Should I expend this money on this phone call?
Right. Production value. I'm assuming you made the phone call.
I did make the phone call. I did, and because then it's a cost, but that's what we have to look at here. We've gotten so used to different ways of doing things. And I think that it's a mistake just to show up with your webcam and not put the extra effort into the value of the event. And I've gotten a lot of yeses. I did get some pushback. So some event producers are like, oh, we want to shorten the time of the speeches. And I'm like, actually, I would rather not. And then here's why. And then I've gotten a lot of yeses. They're like, oh, that makes sense. And I'm like, trust me, I've done it now. And so I'm getting 90 minutes or more on some of these. I try not to, if I'm doing just a regular, what would have been a keynote, I don't want to go much longer than 2 hours, but 90 minutes is kind of my ideal. And then this way I can do workshop style, and I can have breakout sessions, and it just works so much better because now they're engaged, and it's better than the shorter meeting.
That's awesome. So I'm sure that our viewers would probably love to come to your next event. So we'd love to have you tell us where we can reach you, where we can find out about your programs, where you're speaking, all the information, Steve Napolitan. So tell us where we can send them.
Well, the best thing is if you go to stevenapolitan.com and you go under our courses or our digital events, on the menu there, you're going to see one that's free that all of you can come to, and then this will give you that virtual experience that we've been working on, and that's the Wow Client Webcast. And I call it a webcast on purpose, just a quick little, I'm always transparent, but everyone's kind of just sick of all the webinars. And ideally what I meant to say is we're really using the same technology many other people are doing, but it is a live webcast. It's with me there, and we're interacting, and we do 90 minutes, and we do exactly what I was saying. We have interaction with the Q&A. You feel like you're part of it. So it's a great way at no cost for you to come experience what we're doing. And right now we're talking about exactly what we're talking about here. What can you do in any business, whoever's watching this? How do we make this transition? And it's ideally like we have to have a perceived value and an actual value. And we forget about the perceived value. We might have actual value, but we're having a disconnect in our sales right now in this economy. So we're going to talk directly about that, Sue.
Oh, this is what a great gift. So thank you, Steve, for the gift for our viewers and for us. I'd like to show up and say hello.
I'd love to have you there, and I know you've been to my events before, so I would love to have you in the audience again, Sue. Yeah,
absolutely. So any final parting words about events, virtual events, hybrid events that we didn't cover?
I mean, my typical most important thing is get guidance, get mentorship, anything that's outside of your wheelhouse. Don't try to figure it out on your own. Get professional help. And even if you're thinking right now, oh, I don't know if I can afford that, how do you know? I often say, sometimes I've had clients say, oh, because I've had a personal chef off and on time to time, and people go, oh, how do you have that? And I'm like, oh, have you gotten a quote? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, how do you know you can't afford that? So even if you can't afford, like, what if it's $1,000 more than you could afford? Then are you going to go find that $1,000? I bet you would. So the quick things would be get guidance, get mentorship, and then get quotes. Even if you think you can't afford it, you better find out what would it be like to have a professional event like we're talking about. And then you can start, if you don't have the budget, you can go find it and then start lifting the level of your events.
I think that is
Great.
the perfect advice to leave us on. Steve, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, sharing your knowledge, and hopefully you guys all take advantage of that free program. So yes, thank you, Steve.
Yeah, see you soon.
See you soon. Okay, wow, that was incredible. What a great guest. We picked a good one.
Well, thank you.
You're almost at a loss for words, aren't you, Sue?
I am at a loss for words. I mean, there was so much good stuff there.
Yes.
So we're going to be back next Tuesday. We've got another guest, and it's going to be great. So you can join us Tuesdays 4:00 Pacific Standard Time, right here, where you can rock your event.
Rock your event. Here we go.